welcome to Daily Debrief brought to you by People's Dispatch. My name is Shriya and today we talk about a new government in Israel, sanctions imposed on US officials by China, and a strike by Apple's workers in Australia. In Israel, minutes before the midnight deadline, former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu informed Israel's President Isaac Herzog that he had managed to put together a coalition with the right numbers and seems to head the most right-wing government in Israel's history. Three far-right and ultra-conservative parties, Religious, Zionism, Jewish Power and the Noam Party, together won the third highest number of seats in the Knesset. This guarantees them and their views strong representation in the government. Among those, there is a rejection of two-state solution, wider powers for security forces, particularly in the occupied West Bank, anti-queer and anti-women perspectives, and pushing for stricter interpretations of Jewish law when it comes to subjects such as immigration to Israel. The news has raised fears for civil liberties in the state of Israel and, of course, expectations of more brutality in the occupied territories. Abdul from People's Dispatch joins us with more news. So, Abdul, can you tell us first off, what are the details of this agreement?
Well, the agreement is still not finalized, but the details which are published in the Israeli media indicates towards a very extremist, as you rightly pointed out, the most right-wing government ever in Israeli history, with the objectives and with the agreements to even change Israel's basic law, which is considered to be a kind of constitution for it. So it talks about kind of legalizing racism, legalizing gender segregation, legalizing hatred towards the Palestinians and other, legalizing kind of religious discrimination and so on and so forth. It talks about instituting a specific police force to deal with the crimes related to Arab minority population, and then it also talks about changes in the laws which will give more power to legislatures over judiciary, so kind of ending the independence of judiciary in Israel. It also talks about introducing death penalty for quote-unquote acts of terrorism. And we know that when it comes to the Israeli state, it has a very vague definition of terrorism. The Israeli forces are already shooting Palestinians who just are stone pelters or bystanders and so on and so forth. So given the overall understanding of terrorism among the Israeli forces, this legalizing a kind of death penalty for acts of terrorism basically further will increase the suffering of the Palestinians.
Right.
The agreement also talks about annexing more land in the occupied territories. In fact, if it goes as it is hinted in the agreements, the whole of the occupied West Bank might be annexed within few months or years, as per the agreement. So it talks about a kind of ethnic cleansing in Negev, the southern parts of Israel, where kind of making it more Jewish. Then it also talks about making the occupied West Bank territories more Judaize it, make it more Jewish, in a sense, kind of removing the Palestinians, displacing the Palestinians from those regions. As you rightly pointed out, it talks about taking a kind of illegalizing the kind of not illegalizing as such, but kind of taking strong actions against sexual minorities in particular, with kind of legalizing discrimination against them.
Okay.
So if we just see the larger picture which emerges from all these bits and pieces which has kind of emerged in the media, it seems that the upcoming government in Israel is going to be based on an official version of apartheid, where racism, discrimination against religious minorities, discrimination against sexual minorities, and so on and so forth will be legalized. So this is going to be a very scary situation at this moment.
Right, Abdul, and Netanyahu has also claimed that he will bring back status quo through this, move. So, do you think the political scenario right now in Israel will allow that, and how long is the government going to run?
It is difficult to understand what Netanyahu means by status quo. With the agreement which is there in public domain, it is anything but status quoist. It talks about expansion, it talks about annexation, it talks about legalizing certain things which has, at least in the law, was not there in Israeli constitution and Israeli legal system. It talks about changing the relationship between judiciary and the legislature. It talks about changing the relationship between changing the existing law which deals with the relationship between the Arab minority and the Israeli state. It also talks about changing the immigration laws, citizenship laws, and so on and so forth. It also talks about even changing the conscription laws in Israel, which basically, and with exemptions, more and more exemptions to the religious Jewish people. So, given all those changes which are proposed, given the fact that Ben-Gvir is going to be one of the central figures in the coming government, who talks about deporting the quote-unquote disloyal citizens, deporting the Arab Palestinians, and so on and so forth, it is talking about status quo is nothing but a joke at this moment. Also, one should keep in mind that Netanyahu government, not only when he's going, not only in the coming Netanyahu, sorry, in general, not in general has been a leader who has shifted the overall Israeli politics towards the right. So a leader who basically is representing the right-wing government, and who basically is added by the extremist right-wing with each and every new election, it hardly makes sense to talk about a status quo, because right wants to drag the overall politics in Israel towards creating a very religious polity, a religious-centric polity, and which basically means that the secular dream which at least the Zionist founders had in their mind is no more valid. With this ideological shift in Israeli politics, talks of status quo makes no sense.
Right. Thank you so much, Abdul, for joining us today. China's foreign ministry has imposed reciprocal sanctions on 2 US citizens, its foreign ministry announced, after the US on December 9 sanctioned 2 Chinese officials who were posted in Tibet. The two persons, Todd Stein and Miles Yu, will have all assets in China frozen. No Chinese person or organization is permitted to deal with them, or they or their immediate families will be denied entry into the country. Anish from People's Dispatch joins us for more. Hi, so welcome to the episode, Anish. Who are these US officials and what has led to the sanctions?
Yes, so there are, of the two, one is Todd Stein, who leads like a congressional advisory and has been at the forefront of several legislative measures that the US Congress has taken over the past few years, especially including Tibet and Xinjiang. Now, these are obviously, there are being contentious claims being made by the United States about human rights abuses, which are yet to be substantiated with any clear evidence to the fact. But that aside, the any kind of human rights claims cannot be obviously done, bypassing national sovereignty of other countries, which the United States kind of gives its allies that sort of benefit of doubt to. But when it comes to obviously China and other countries, it's not that concerned about national sovereignty. On the other person is Miles Yu. Now he's the person who always worked behind the scenes during the Trump administration, leading the very hawkish, as we know, the hawkish kind of foreign policy measures against China, including the trade war, all sorts of disputes that were raised, not just in terms of trade, but also the sort of diplomatic tensions that continues to this day. is pretty much his legacy in many ways. That's what he would even claim. The person is a conservative sort of. He at least is a professor at the Naval Academy, but other than that, he's politically he has been a writer known for his hawkish and neocon uh, views, especially when it comes to China, where he has consistently insisted that that a conflict, a physical conflict, is inevitable, and the United States should be preparing for it, rather than any kind of diplomacy. So these are the two people who are right now the targets of the sanction. Obviously, the sanction, as the Chinese government has pointed out, is a countermeasure, a sort of counter sanction, so to say, for sanctioning its own officials in China, especially the former party secretary in Tibet. And that obviously is one of the, it obviously shows this sort of, the fact that when we are talking about the thaw with the Biden-Xi meeting, that really did not happen and transpire. And there is still a lot more to do when it comes to any kind of bringing down tensions between the two countries.
Right, Anish. And can you also tell us a little bit about what can be the political implications of these sanctions?
Well, the political implications only show that diplomatic tensions are going to continue despite talks. And that is a sad reality at this point, because the US establishment, despite promises of toning down its rhetoric against China, is definitely still continuing the same kind of hawkish policies that the Trump administration gave. And that is not something that is comforting for anybody who's advocating for peace and diplomacy in the region. The kind of disputes that US and China, especially United States, is raising against China are matters that does not really concern the United States to begin with. Be it when it comes to Taiwan or the South China Sea, the US really does not have skin in the game, but nevertheless, it kind of intervenes in these, often with the excuse that it is acting on behalf of its allies in the region, who may or may not even have invited the United States. But nevertheless, the interventions have only worsened the situation in the region obviously which have had very strained political history, but at the same time was not known for the level of tensions that we are now witnessing today. So obviously these sanctions are just a symptom, obviously, or a sign to say that the tensions are going to continue for the foreseeable future right now.
And on that note, Anish, please stay on with us. We'll be back with you for our next story. Apple workers in Australia have begun strike action, seeking better working conditions and wages from the afternoon of December 23, with plans to stay away till Christmas. It's a move that could hit sales of the tech giant during the peak Christmas season. Workers represented by Australia's Retail and Fast Food Workers Union had announced the walkout earlier in the month, but management did nothing to address their concerns and put off the need for industrial action. Anish is back with us for more on this story. Right, Anish. So, at the focus of this strike, there seems to be an agreement made with the workers some 8 years ago, which talked about their basic rights and that those which have not been granted. Do you have the details about it?
Yeah, so some of the most jarring things that the union, the Retail and Fast Food Workers Union, or RAFO, has pointed out is the fact that this deal, this sort of contract deal that was made in 2014, pretty much prevents Apple workers from getting weekends, any kind of consecutive days off, or even the fact that there are not any legally binding agreement that actually gives them a roster, a proper schedule, things that can be planned ahead of time, things that can actually allow them, adequate resting time, or what they are calling for is the 12-hour resting time that is necessary for different shifts, because obviously they are working longer consecutive shifts, and also obviously even the rotation of shifts are not very well planned. So very often these workers have to work overtime, coming at a time when the holiday season are on. This is definitely going to be have a bigger impact on workers, because obviously their workload increases, but Apple is not hiring new people to help them in this sort of very busy season. So this definitely is a timely action that they have taken after months of negotiations that have actually failed to bring any kind of anything even remotely agreeable for the workers to actually agree upon.
And there's been no response from the companies. And what do you think is going to be the impact on Apple's employees and the of this particular action and its employees in the rest of the world?
Yeah, so right now, we're not very sure how many of them have actually actively participated, but obviously a couple of hundreds have turned up. We definitely know for a fact that a large number of workers are not very happy about the current contract deal. As you said, Apple has not even given a very agreeable agreement. The last time an agreement, a tentative deal was offered to the workers, to the union to vote upon, it was resoundingly rejected by about 2,000 workers who voted on the deal. So this definitely shows that by and large, workers are unhappy with the situation that they are in. Apple is sort of at this point trying to keep mum, but obviously this is a prolonged industrial action, so definitely they will have to make their move right now. They will have to intervene, or if not intervene, actually come up with a deal that can actually prevent any kind of prolonged work stoppage during the holiday season. So we need to wait and see what they're going to come up with. But definitely, as you pointed out, this is going to have a bigger impact because this is, as we have talked about in the show many times over, this is definitely part of industrial actions and also labor unionizing and organizing that we have seen on multinational retail chains around the world. And this is not just Apple, but this is also Starbucks. It's also other sort of retail chains where you have workers who were otherwise conventionally not that strongly organized, are trying to mobilize their forces and demand fair wages, because very often they are at the receiving end, especially when we saw during the pandemic, they were at the receiving end of the entire process. They were frontline workers in many cases, and definitely they want their fair wages given to them. And this has had its own sort of domino effect where workers like Apple workers are actually also calling for a fair share of or a fair deal that they can actually work under. Because in many cases, the kind of claims that Rafu has brought out shows that Apple is actually making its workers work under even below the minimum legal requirements that are necessary for a fair deal. So this is definitely something that the government also has to intervene in. But it shows that there is a growing tendency globally among workers of different multinational corporations to actually unionize and organize for a better deal for themselves.
Thank you so much, Anish, for joining us. And that's all we have for today. For more such stories, keep watching www.peoplesdispatch.org and also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.